Okay, sometimes we were too psychologically analyzing people. And too much of that is not always helpful. Paul's going to talk a little bit about that. And so tomorrow we're going to dedicate a whole hour on transference and countertransference and how to manage it. Today we cover so many things in one day. Negative impact on misuse of self. And we've got to be aware of that. And unwillingness to be flexible in treatment plan. Flexibility. If you have a rigid personality, everything had to be just like this. You know, how many people have OCDs, right? True, everything had to be just right. So it's very hard to be, to be flexible. But then you have to be flexible where the needs are. Like today, if I want everything theater style, okay, in roles, in, straight, everything had to be right. So when Bonnie needs a desk, well, Bonnie, too bad, right? Yes, she's got a desk, right? So this is why it's so important when your client comes in and you know what they need, even though it's different from what you normally do. And you will allow them to do it. A client said, I have this phobia in a closed space. I can't, your office kind of give me the jitters. What would you do? Hey, nice day. I got a beautiful backyard. Let's walk and talk. Right? That's how you build relationship. And they said, aha, you understand my need. Even in small gestures. And it makes a big impact. Sometimes they say, silence is golden. I asked you a question. I allowed you time to think through, so I'll keep quiet. I think sometimes psychotherapists, and other professionals like teachers, we couldn't stop talking, right? Because that's our profession, we're talking therapy, right? So we got to talk, we got to show them how much we know. But sometimes silence is golden, you think. But then when you do it inappropriately, how would the client feel? The client feel you don't care? The client feel that you are detached from them? You never know what the other person is thinking, right? So therefore, be very cautious and say, if you use your silence and as, as something to draw out from the client, you have to do it appropriately. And some people like confrontation. Now, confrontation sometimes is necessary. Sometimes clients require you to confront them, and so they will have to move. But if you focus, keep on teaching them, you see what you're doing? I can see you're resisting, da-da-da. And then sure, you give them knowledge to realization of what they were doing. That's good. But if it's too much of that, they're not going to come back. This person is hurting me. I already got enough, in my environment, enough in my home, enough from colleagues. I don't need your therapist to tell me that. So sometimes it's really, so how delicate we walk with our client, isn't it? Tippy-toe most of the time, right? With our ears open, eyes open, and we just had to give whatever we understand and show them, hey, here I am I'm very vulnerable, here I am, I offer you. And I'm trained. I'm not just doing it out of my, fantasy in my head. I know the literature. This is why I give you articles to read, right? And inappropriate disclosure of own emotion and conflict. It's very powerful. Let's just talk a little bit about this one. Have you ever cried Have you ever cried with a client? Give me a show of hands. Should you have tears?
No, that's what happens. Yeah. It's just all of a sudden like tears.
It just happened naturally. Just the tears going down your eyes. How did you handle that? Do you apologize? Do you share? Let's hear, louder so I can hear.
I don't think I've really made, there are tears, and I'm trying to think. I think the odd time I've said, sorry, if your story has moved me so much, or something like that, you know.
You say sorry, and because you moved me so much, and my tears,
Well, because some people, I think it's, they're conflicted about your show of emotion.
Yes. Yes. What kind of conflict would that be? The client will be conflicted because the therapist cried.
Well, I don't know. I'm just surmising.
What do you think?
Sympathy.
Sympathy, that is positive or negative?
It can be clients there to get help, not to get sympathy.
Aha. Good. They said, I'm here to, for you to help me. I don't need sympathy. Okay, fair enough. Any other reason? How would you react? All of a sudden, you started to have tears in your eyes.
How would I react if my therapist did it?
No, for yourself, yeah. How do you feel when you all of a sudden you started to cry?
I feel touched.
Huh?
I feel touched.
You feel touched. Okay.
I can, it's almost like the pain is so great.
Yes. So the pain of your client touched your heart, and you get emotional, and then you cry. Okay? And it could be positive, it could be negative. We'll talk
The
about.
connection between you and the client is established where there's that bond, then I think the emotion is more appropriate than if it's just somebody you haven't got that connection.
It has to have a good connection.
So I think of one client who has been with me for quite a long time, and at times she's brought me to tears with the abuse that she suffered as a child from her father.
So you could only use your tears when there is a bond between you and your client. Fair?
Yeah.
One of my graduate students could not stop crying. She had a client. When the client related the client's experiences, she started to cry. And I knew it. I could see from my monitor in my supervision, she couldn't help it. So I walked over and I said, I knocked at the door. I said, may I come in? Would you like me there? And so she said, well, I'll handle it. Good. Anyways, afterwards, she said, I don't know what to do with this. I easily cry. When people share anything with me, all of a sudden I started to cry. I said, okay, that will be the goal of the supervision training. Well, we have to accept the fact that we have that kind of, soft-heartedness, right? It's not a bad thing. But sometimes when you feel so embarrassed, when you feel you are useless, you're not helping your client, you're weak, you're a weakling. You always think that when tears are weak. Tears are not weak. You have to use it appropriately. But should we control that emotion? We have to be spontaneous. Didn't we say we have to be true to ourselves? Yes, Bonnie.
True, but I think you also have to know your clients too. And sometimes it's not appropriate.
Yes.
Because they need your strength.
The clients need your strength. The research shows that about 75% of psychotherapists, excuse me, had cried with a client. And I think the research showed that more females prone to use tears and cried with empathy for the client than male. And also the people in different orientations may use that more freely than others. Somehow the CBT group very seldom use tears. And there's like, you know, like humanistic, psychodynamic, they are a little freer to do it. So I often, very interested in how often do our psychotherapists use tears, and how do we use it appropriately? Do we pretend to be an actor? And also there too, if you are good in acting, you take a role of an actor, you might use it more often, right?
I wouldn't say I use it. Like, it's not a tool of mine. I don't see it as a tool.
It is not a tool.
Yeah.
It is coming from your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, I have supervised many students and I have done my work. And I'll tell you, I only cried once. Because I guess, I don't know, it's my characteristic, I guess. I'm kind of a happy person, maybe. and I don't know what it is in me, but I don't cry. I understand, I empathize, and I know what they are. And they understand that I do understand and I do care. Now, whatever tools that you use, you have to let them know that you understand, you have listened to their stories, but you do care. And not only caring, you do have means to help them get out from the bottom and move upward.
Isn't there a danger as a therapist that if we show emotion and feel that pain to that extent that we're crying, are we taking their own pain onto ourselves and protect ourselves from their pain type of a thing?
You could do that, wouldn't it?
It's like a safeguard.
Yes. You see, we have a lot of defensive mechanism within us. Mm-hmm. And we also, with the split moment, we have to come across, we have to somehow search, what should we be doing? Have you ever thought sometimes with a question there, and your mind goes a mile a minute, and you say, should I do this? Should I do that? What might be most appropriate? That means that you really need to know your client in order to choose the option that you have in your head, right? When you choose the right option and you see smile, you see restfulness, and you see peace. Mm-hmm. But if you choose the wrong one, sometimes you get hostile reaction, more anxious. But maybe that is the process a person needs to go through. You never know. So this is why you need to build self-confidence coming from competence. We always say, our ethical code, you never practice out of your area of competence. So then you say, all right, I know how to do it. I make mistakes, but how do I correct that mistake? I show the client, I make mistakes too, but I corrected myself, and that is important. This 12-year-old girl, she was my client. The parents didn't know what to do with her because she's so moody, she's aggressive, and she's depressed, and so they didn't know what to do with her. So she came to me, and I did play therapy, talk therapy, and we got along really well. And she was improving. Her mood swings is less, and she was able to function in school, and she was relating better with her siblings, and a little, better with parents. So one session I had with the parents, this is my practice. I felt if I have children client, the young client, they could be doing so well in my office. when they go back to their own environment, where, you know, the family is and where, you know, all the things that are happening, the improvement rate would be very low. So I always, when I accepted a client who is under maybe 15, I would elicit the help from the parents. I said, once in a while, I would need to talk with you, and you have to give me feedback so that I know where we are going. So the parents came, and we had a good session. I understood what was going on in the home and how, you know, the family dynamics and where the conflicts are, and, you know, the regular stuff. And we were doing very well, and all of a sudden the phone rang. It was a brother of my client. And he discovered that she had taken overdose. And she wanted to end her life. And he panicked. The first thing I said is, call the father, call 911, and told the brother, stay where he is, the ambulance coming, and then the parents were going home. So they did. They took her to the hospital, and then, you know, washed the stomach and everything else. And so after a couple of months, and they said, could we resume? Because in the hospital they have, you know, therapy. Could we resume therapy with you? I say, sure. So she came in with the parents. The brothers, did the brother come? No, the brother didn't come. She and the parents came. She was just stone-faced, rigid, didn't do anything, wouldn't say anything. So I dismissed the parents outside in the waiting room, and I sat with her. She was no longer the same client that I had. She was so uptight, and she was holding onto the chair that you were sitting in, a comfy chair, and then she was shaking. At that time, you know, the normal greeting, talking, asking questions, and there was no response whatsoever, just shaking. And I moved over. I don't know whether you touch your client at all. Only do it appropriately. Because sometimes a touch could be very powerful. And if it's inappropriate, sometimes it could be abuse, right? So especially gender. So be very careful with touch. I moved my chair a little closer to her chair. You know where my chair is, eh? So moved closer to the chair. And I sat there with her. I took a deep breath. I looked at her. Then she made contact with me because I was quiet. You see, silence is so important, isn't it? I wasn't going to bombard her with questions. And I just sat there with her. And then she was going out. Then I was pleased, but I saw teardrops coming from her eyes. Oh my gosh. My feelings was, there she is. There she is in pain. No words could express that kind of pain. Sometimes we think we are verbal human beings. We wanted to talk. But we have forgotten the deepest healing, deepest expression is quietness, reflective. So when I saw tears coming from her eyes, I knew I was connecting with her. Because going to the hospital, I'm sure mom and dad was concerned, and she felt guilty, and so much going on, and pumped the stomach. I mean, there's a lot of suffering. So finally, she was able to cry within herself. I don't know, I did not measure my strength or distance or anything. I just naturally feeling I want to touch her. So I just kind of, may I touch you? And I touched her hand. Boy, she started crying, and guess who else crying? Oh, that was the very first time I thought, Lilian. Oh, I started to cry, and my pressure gone out of my mind. I thought, phew. And her pressure started to deep breathe, and the oxygen go into her brain. You should see the color in her face, and her hands started to warm up into my hand. I thought, I tell you, that should be a picture of empathy, picture of togetherness, and oh boy, was that healing. Oh. So I started laughing. I said, you had a tough few weeks, didn't you? There's bursts of blood. Now, I'm tempted. Well, I guess because I've been teaching so long, I had to measure what I need to do. Should I go over and give her a hug, or should I distance myself and let her, do her own thing? It's hard. Sometimes when you want to make decisions, it's not so easy, isn't it? We've got to calculate for the benefit of the client. Is she ready? What is the purpose if I want to hug? That means that you just, I love you, and I'm sorry what happened to you. It's not therapeutic, is it? I want her to leave my office walking tall. Be collected. Know what she's doing. So as a therapist, every step of the way, you set goals. Mini goals, step by step, until the client can feel that this is what I'm committed to do, what the client is able to do. So I started talking normally like what we used to have a session. I gave her permission. I said, what had happened must have caused you a lot of pain. And it must have caused you a lot of pain before you took those extra pills. If you're not ready to talk about that, it's fine with me. I'm glad you are here. I am glad your brother made that call. And you see, think positively. Build a bridge so that you have a path to move forward. And say, but I didn't really mean that. I said, I'm sure you didn't mean it, but something triggered in it. Oh, yes. And it started to open up a little bit at a time, that door. You know what? As a psychotherapist, how hard is it to share your life, right? Like this morning, even with your colleagues, it's hard. Can you imagine as a client who the door was shut for so long and closed so tight, and you have to watch where that crack open and see the light? You shine the light. You are the light. You shine that light in, and the door started to open, and they are relaxed with you. And that was very rewarding for me. But I never forgot. I did cry.
Did you apologize for crying, or did you apologize for crying?
No. Because it was my tear, it's my crying that got her to feel that I am with her. Because she wanted to cry, but she just feel that she cannot. The society would not allow her to cry. You're weak. People think that crying is weakness. And also what she had caused the family so much trouble. So she apologized, but she didn't have to. It was not her fault. It was the only means that she knew to end her pain. Of course, you have clients that will, think of suicide to punish other people. There are people like that. But in her case, that was the only way she wanted to end her pain. As a therapist, you could say, I understand you are in pain, but there are solutions. You are precious. That's so important, that she feels loved, she feels valued, and there are ways out. You see, when you have no way out, that is hopeless. So most important thing you could give your clients is hope. And you are there to facilitate so that she can hope to do the best to fulfill her mission in life. And that is very important. Are there any questions?